to welcome you all today to the Dependent Adult Abuse Training. I'm Heather Weber. I'm the social worker here at Fountain West. I've been here for almost 10 years. This coming January, I've been here 10 years. I took the training for this course in August of '07, and I have to renew my training every 3 years, whereas this training has to be done by everyone else every 5 years. The purpose of this curriculum is to provide consistent training for mandatory reporters for dependent adult abuse. The Iowa Department on Aging curriculum is what I use, and their approval is number 19. We have our own approval number from the Iowa Department of Public Health, and that is 739 is our approval number. We are approved from this year till 2012, and then I have to renew the curriculum again for the facility. Today we're just doing 1 hour of the 2-hour mandatory reporting training. The next one will be done the 20th of August. We have to do a minimum of 2 hours of this training. You all got a participant handbook and acknowledgement statement. You just fill out the middle of that, but don't sign it. You'll sign it at the conclusion of the 2nd hour. Each participant will complete and sign it. And then now I'm going to have you flip to the front page, and that should be the pre-test. If you go ahead and take that if you haven't already. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm going to start by giving a little background on Iowa's aging population. There are 596,110 people in Iowa that are 60 or older. That's almost 20% of Iowa's population. The ranking for Iowa among the U.S. for people that are 85 and older, we're 3rd in the nation. For 75 and older, we rank 5th, and for 65 and older, we rank 5th as well, and for 60 or older, we rank 8th. Nationally, the population of 65 plus will increase from 35 million in 2000 to 40 million in 2010. and then 55 million by the time it's 2020. That's a 36 increase from the decade before. The 85 plus population is projected to increase from 4.2 million in 2000 to 6.1 million in 2010. That's a 40% increase. And then raised to 7.3 million in 2020. And that's a 44% increase. Approximately 1% or 1 in every 8 of the population is an older American. A definition of an older Iowan is an Iowan that is 60 years or older. Elder abuse occurs everywhere, in people's homes, facilities, and in the community at large. It may include negligence, denial of critical care, financial exploitation, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or sexual exploitation. This social problem is not new and is only beginning to gain attention as a serious problem. As we learn more about elder abuse, we also learn more about the prevalence of this problem. Elder abuse is widespread. Because it is still largely hidden, elder abuse is grossly underreported and underrecognized. Estimates vary a great deal, but include 84% of elder abuse cases go unreported, and 40% of all elder abuse involves some form of financial exploitation. Abuse can dramatically shorten the life of an older victim. A mortality rate study found that by the end of the study, which was 13 years long, only 9% of the abused elders were still living, compared to 40% of non-abused elders. Who are the perpetrators in the community? Adult children account for 47%, spouses for 19%, other relatives 9%, grandchildren are 9%, and siblings are 6%. Over half are male, 53%, 47% are female, 77% are white, and 39% are ages 41 to 59. Who are the victims of abuse? Almost 68% are female, and the average age is 77.9 years old. Neglect is the most common type of abuse. Of the caretaker abuse reports that were substantiated in '96, 55% involved neglect. The Department of Human Service figures can be found at their website if you're interested in seeing what the current statistics are. Persons with disability. The extent of the problem, there are 54 million Americans who live with physical, cognitive, and emotional disabilities, such as cerebral palsy, autism, traumatic brain injury, mental illness, progressive neurological diseases, dementia, and the loss of sight and hearing. Some Iowa statistics. There are 376,000 adults estimated to have a disability in Iowa. Of them, 161,000 are men and 215,000 are women. The prevalence of disability by age group is 9% are 18 to 44 years old, 20% are 45 to 64-year-olds, and 32% are 65 plus. Persons with disabilities are 4 to 10 times more likely to become victims of violence, abuse, or neglect than persons without disabilities. Where abuse occurs. They're usually perpetrated in isolated locations where the person with a disability has little or no control over their environment. Institutional facilities provide settings for victimization and private living situations. Who commits these acts? Men, either as intimate partners or as healthcare workers, are the most likely to abuse a person with disability than women. Family members may victimize relatives with a disability, and staff members or other residents in a facility commit abuse against persons with disabilities. Community-based personal care attendants may perpetrate abuse. The perpetrator's attitude about persons with disability: they dehumanize them, they see them as damaged merchandise, that they have no feeling of pain, that they're a disabled menace, or that they're helpless. Factors that make persons with disabilities acceptable are they're unemployed or they're underemployed, limit choices of caregivers and housing, forcing some to live in high crime areas. This misperception that persons living with disabilities are at less risk of victimization than a person who has none, because having a disability protects a person from victimization. Behaviors that may contribute to vulnerability. They have difficulty with learning communication and social adjustment. They have difficulty with anger management, prompting others to respond negatively. Cognitive problems, reducing the ability to perceive, remember, or understand risky situations. Spastic body movements, slow physical responses, or speech impairments. They use alcohol and drugs to fit in. Understanding victims of abuse and why they do not report it. They lack self-confidence. Abuse or neglect is a way of life for them. They don't consider someone would help them. They have past assistance escalated the abuse. Some cultures believe family matters stay in the family. Victim may be ashamed or embarrassed. They promise not to tell if it stops being inflicted on victim or victim's pet. Withholding of care or necessities if the victim reports. And fear or threat of being placed in a nursing home. Why mandatory reporters do not report abuse. They feel it would hurt the relationship with the victim or person suspected of having abused the person. Retaliation from the victim or the perpetrator. fear of losing their job, take time out from job to make the call and end up having to make many calls and then get called back. They don't want to go to court for fear of the court time and loss of work time. They think nothing changes and everyone involved gets upset. They cannot get DHS or DAI to accept a report, or they don't want to get involved. It's not any of their business. But everyone here is a mandatory reporter, and it is our business to report it. Why does abuse occur? Retaliation for something the victim did to the person. Violence is a way of life as they know it. There's an unresolved conflict, lack of close family ties, lack of financial resources, resentment of dependency, increased life expectancy, history of mental or emotional problems, unemployment, and a history of alcohol and drug abuse. And also you have long-distance caregivers. Common characteristics of a victim: they're overwhelmingly female. It's an advanced age. They're dependent. They may be a problem drinker. There may be intergenerational conflict, internalizing the blame, and isolation. Dependent adult abuse and elder abuse. Elder abuse is defined in the Older Americans Act as abuse, neglect, or exploitation of an individual age 60 or older. However, Iowa does not have an elder abuse law. Therefore, the dependent adult abuse law is utilized, as well as other criminal code sections, which would be the dependent adult abuse law in Iowa Code Chapter 235B and 235E. These laws are specifically aimed at protecting dependent adults from abuse by their caretakers. Dependent adult abuse agency roles. DHS is responsible for the evaluation, assessment of dependent adult abuse in the community. DIA is responsible for the investigation of dependent adult abuse caused by staff or an employee of a facility, which would be a healthcare facility or a hospital, or program like an assisted living, adult daycare, or an elder group home. Each department must then investigate the report and make an evaluation of the situation. This is not to say that other forms of abuse which do not fall under the dependent adult abuse law should be ignored. Avenues are available to pursue abuse that do not involve a dependent adult or caretaker. To locate an appropriate resource, contact the Iowa Department of Aging, DHS, or DIA. Iowa's dependent adult abuse law. In laying the groundwork for dependent adult services, the law stresses the need for the state to provide protection of Iowa's dependent adults. In the Dependent Adult Abuse Information Registry, the code also focuses on the right to the individual privacy, as well as the need for a centralized system of collecting, maintaining, and disseminating adult abuse information. The Iowa Code will be referred to throughout this training, and it is Chapter 235B, which deals directly with dependent adult abuse in the community, and Chapter 235E, which deals directly with dependent adult abuse in facilities and programs. To obtain the most current information, you can contact DHS, which is 242-6021, DIA, which is 281-5467, or the Department on Aging, which is 725-3321. Community-based. The department shall receive dependent adult abuse reports and shall collect, maintain, and disseminate the reports by establishing a central registry for dependent adult abuse information. Examples of this would be in a residential house, an apartment, a mobile home, independent living. In facilities or programs when an alleged perpetrator is not a staff member or an employee. So if a family member came in here and was abusing their mother or father or sister, brother, we would call DHS for that. We would not call DIA. Now we're going to go through the definitions. A dependent adult refers to a person 18 years of age or older who is unable to protect his or her own interests or is unable to adequately perform or obtain services necessary to meet essential human needs as a result of a physical or mental condition which requires assistance from another or is defined by departmental rule. A caretaker means a related or non-related person who has the responsibility for the protection, care, or custody of a dependent adult as a result of assuming the responsibility voluntarily by contract, through employment, or by order of the court. A voluntary caretaker is a related or non-related person who has the responsibility for the protection, care, or custody of a dependent adult as a result of assuming the responsibility voluntarily, which means a person voluntarily provides care to a dependent adult, and according to 235B, is considered the dependent adult's caretaker. Examples of this would be any person providing a daily meal to a dependent adult, any person providing daily care to a dependent adult, any person providing care to a resident of a healthcare facility or program, which applies to us, an attorney in fact or power of attorney. A related or non-related person who has the responsibility for protection, care, or custody of a dependent adult as a result of a contract means the dependent adult and the person have a contract wherein the person agrees to provide care to the dependent adult according to Iowa Code 235B.2 is the dependent adult's caretaker. Examples of this is a dependent adult receives funding for health care on an individual contract basis, such as Consumer-Directed Attendant Care, or CDAC, program or in-home health-related care program. An individual and dependent adult enter into a private contract where the individual provides care to the dependent adult in exchange for money or anything else of value, room and board, a vehicle, signing their house over. Caretaker is a related or non-related person who has the responsibility for protection, care, or custody of a dependent adult through employment, which means the person is employed and is being paid a salary to provide care to a dependent adult according to Iowa Code 235B.2 is the dependent adult's caretaker. Examples of this would be dependent adult hires a neighbor to provide an evening meal and pays the neighbor $10 to $40 a week. A service agency arranges for paid staff to provide services to a dependent adult. Relatives agree to contribute equally to pay for a granddaughter to provide care to a grandma, the dependent adult. The granddaughter is the caretaker. And then you have court-ordered caretaker. They are a related or non-related person who has the responsibility for the protection, care, or custody of a dependent adult by order of the court, which means a person has been appointed by the court to assume the responsibility for the dependent adult's protection, care, or custody, according to 235B.1 is the dependent adult's caretaker. Examples of this would be a guardian or conservator. An example, an 83-year-old man experiences loss of memory. He forgot to pay his bills, resulting in the phone and electricity being disconnected. His relatives came together and petitioned the court for a niece to assume responsibilities for him. The court appointed his niece as his guardian and conservator. What is dependent adult abuse? It is defined by any of the following as a result of the willful, negligent acts or omissions of a caretaker. There is physical abuse, sexual exploitation, financial exploitation, denial of critical care,